Hello, nerds. My microphone's really far away from my face for some reason. We are reacting to Thy Art is Murder. New track is called, I literally just was looking at it and then spaced it off. Until There Is No Longer. I've heard this one briefly. Didn't hear the entire thing, so we're still virgin ears. But reported on it as I'm recording this. Reported on it for the last Weekend Nerddom. This is the reaction of which I referenced briefly. So since all that's out of the way, we got to get this out the way too. Well, hello there, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for this reaction video. We have a couple of things to get out of the way before we can get back to said video. First and foremost, I do reactions as more of a initial analysis. So we're going to be stopping this. We're going to be talking over certain things. We're going to be replaying sections. We're going to be doing a lot of things that are not conducive to somebody who just wants to watch the original content. If you would rather watch the original content uninterrupted, then please go do that. I definitely would recommend that before you join me here on this reaction and analysis. Beyond that, I have to get my qualifications out of the way. I have been training in music since I was a little kid, which means approximately 30 years. I have been a professional musician and studio producer for about 20 of those 30 years. I have also been making, directing, and editing music videos and YouTube content for over a decade at this point. So I have a base of knowledge that lends itself to adding something constructive to this conversation. And that is exactly what this is. This is a conversation. This is my interpretation of what we are about to react to and analyze. If you have a different interpretation, that's what the comment section is for. Let's have a conversation about this thing, about why it may or may not be the greatest thing ever, whatever it is. I welcome the comments. I do request, though, that you try and be constructive with your criticism, or you at least have some sort of knowledge base to work from, because gotcha moments are not going to work in this comment section. I do have a pretty strong knowledge base and a pretty strong opinion most of the time. So, all of that being said, thank you very much for joining me right now, and let's get back to your regularly scheduled reaction video. Okay, so Thy Art is Murder. My history with this band is actually, funny enough, goes back to like high school. But the only reason I was aware of this band, I didn't really listen to them in high school. A friend of mine went to go pick up one of their records. Or went to go listen to, because when I was in high school, you could actually listen to the music before you bought it, because, you know, there was still physical media at the time. So went to go listen to, it wasn't the CD, it wasn't that long ago, because I think it was my senior year. So it was like they had a digital listen station, so you could listen to like the first 20 seconds of 3 songs off of this collection of records, and Thy Art is Murder is one of them. And when he went to go listen to the music, the programming was messed up, so it wasn't Thy Art is Murder, it was some jazz band. That was the first time that I was ever aware of this band. Honestly, like I said, don't really listen to them much, so I don't really have much else as far as a history with them. But as far as their Wikipedia, did I get the Wikipedia? Oh, I didn't get the Wikipedia information. So yeah, that's all we're gonna do. If we do another Thy Art is Murder, we will be sure to cover the actual history of the band and not just my limited experience. Expectations for this. Like I said, I've heard a few seconds of this song, so I already know it's pretty brutal. It's pretty fast. It's pretty heavy. I'm intrigued again, because this is a band that I don't have a lot of experience with. I'm intrigued again to see if the Rock Bass Syndrome is strong with this one. I also want to, like, I'm always intrigued by aggressive and extreme music production, just to see how sonically it lays out in your ears is very interesting to me, because that's what I study. That's what I went to school for. So hearing how other producers produce aggressive music, it helps expand my earlobes or my ear holes or whatever, however you want to put that. So yeah, I'm definitely looking to see a new sonic landscape, because again, I'm not a band I have an extensive history with. As far as that goes, I really have no expectations. So, I do anticipate this band not doing drum replacements. It's probably going to be a little difficult to pick out drum replacements, because again, if the few seconds of the song I've already heard, if I'm recalling that correctly, the mix is a little muddy, so it kind of makes it difficult to tell if it's a real human playing the drums that are on the actual recording, or if they replaced the real human with a computer. But yeah, I'm expecting a real human. So that being said, let's get into the actual reaction itself, shall we? Yeah, so here we go. Thy art is murder until there is no longer. Off the bat, we're just visually right here, I really like that modern deathcore bands and the more modern extreme bands are leaning away from the Tree Roots style band logos and for something a little more, not necessarily more legible, just a little more dynamic, a little more visually interesting. I feel like the Tree Roots logo thing has been done to death. So this being something unique unto itself, I have an appreciation for. All right, let's get back to it. Yes, Rock Bass Syndrome in full effect. So they are tuned to, if that's D flat, drop D flat. If that's an open, if they're playing the open chord on that, I don't know, but that's what I assume. That is a real human playing the drums. Yes! All right, so I'm going to show you how I know that that is a real human playing drums. I mean, it still could be programmed. It still could be drum replacement, but I don't think it is. So let's go over why I think that. The kicks are not 100% uniform. The snare is not 100% uniform. And if you're going to replace anything, those are the two things that are always replaced when you're doing drum replacement, is the kick and the snare. That way you have, if you have a less talented drummer who is super up and down with their tension, or with the, what's the word I'm looking for, the power with which they hit the mallet to the head, then it creates a very uneven sound. And while this very well could still be quantized, because drum replacement does not negate quantization, it sounds like there's variance on, it doesn't sound like it's on a grid. And that's what quantization does, is it lines everything up onto a grid. And it feels a little more humanized than a properly quantized song. So if you pay attention to the differences. Every time he hits the snare, it doesn't sound like the same snare hit. And those kicks, the space between each time the mallet hits the head of the kick drum there's minor variances in there that feel very human. So either the producer took an exceptional amount of time doing drum replacement, which I don't know why you would, or that's a real human. Yeah, I don't even think that's properly quantized. It might be quantized and then like minorly tweaked, but that sounds pretty human. Uh-oh.
Okay, a little hiccup, so let's continue, shall we? Okay, so let's talk about the vocal production here. There's something that needs to be paused. Okay, so vocal production on this. This sounds, so we have at least two different vocal tracks that are doing the same thing. So if you have two separate vocal takes that you then layer over the top of each other, it sounds like we're potentially getting a stereo expanded image of that layering, whereas some other producers will take the two separate takes and expand one take more into the right side and one take more into the left side, which has a similar effect, but I prefer to do it that way because that sounds more interesting to me. So that, but the effect for the vocal compression, as far as like the scratchy, growly bits, it has a tendency to kind of smooth out those transients in the vocal, which is kind of what makes the growly sound, the gruff sound. So that's really cool. But it then also sounds like they take the end result and apply a little bit of like maybe distortion. Let's go back a little bit because that's kind of where I'm thinking they're going. I think there might be some sort of minor vocal distortion to this as well. So let's listen again and see if that's exactly what it is. Yes, but it's not on all of the vocals. So there's two different vocal takes here that we just heard. There's the more higher, kind of breathier sounding vocal take. And then there's the gruffer, sounds like the chorus almost vocal. I think the higher one is the main vocal take. Let's see. Let's listen again. So that's higher. And that's the lower one. So the lower one, there's a little bit more layering going on. There's definitely some chorus, a little bit more. There's chorus on everything. Or reverb. It's kind of hard to tell with the mix. The one might be chorus, the other one might be reverb. But there's a little bit more to that, the gruffer lower vocal that comes in there second, and a little more up in your face kind of feel, less with the atmospheric effects on the other slightly higher vocal delivery. So that's a really interesting layering effect. Usually when you make that more intimate sounding with the less spatial effects on the vocal, when you do that, that's generally for an emotive section of the song. which with extreme music like this, not a whole lot of overly emotive sections. But yeah, so like the greatest example of that would be, it's a Stone Sour song, something about fire. You were my fire, and so I burned, and now there's nothing left of me. That song. There is a moment in that song where the instrumental cuts out entirely, and it's just Corey's vocal, and they did a very different mix for that 2 seconds worth of vocal than the entire rest of the song, because the entire rest of the song, there's reverb on his voice to make it stand out a little bit, thicken it up a bit. There's other compression, and the EQ is slightly different, and so on and so forth. So because that point in that song is so emotive, the raw nature of that production makes it stand out, makes it more effective. On something like this, why you would do that is really just to vary the dynamics of the vocal. That way it doesn't seem so one note all the time, because a lot of screamy vocalists, a lot of vocalists who do the screams, there's by and large, you have like 3, maybe 4 different sounds that come out of a screamed vocal. And in order to kind of add a little more variation to that, that's what you do, is you add some verb, you take some verb off, you add a little bit more chorus, make it wider in the mix, double up the vocal takes, and then pan one to the one side and the other to the other side. So yeah, that's generally how that goes.
So let's continue. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are tuned to D flat. And then we got a bridge. Oh, I like that transition into that bridge. Let's go back into that. That was great. So structurally, this song is not super complicated. Structurally, this is a fairly basic, like, been around since the dawn of time kind of song structure. But you play with dynamics, and that's what makes it interesting. So let's listen to that transition from section to section again. Get into this kind of, oh yeah, oh, that's fun. And then for the bridge, again, it's not dramatic variation. It's still dynamically impressive, but it's not a dramatic variation. We're effectively doing just a minor variation on the main verse riff. You just have a little bit more of the, sorry, I'm not holding my pick correctly. You have just a little bit more of the slide between chords is there. It kind of, and that gives it a very different feel, and it's not too alien so as to be jarring. Like, that's a really cool effect. I seriously dig that. Then we have another bridge. And then we go back into this. I just really like it when the instrumental cuts like that. Oof, and then we've got the mosh section. This is where you throw down in the pit, baby. So there we go. That is Thy Art is Murder. Let's get back to this. So, Thy Art is Murder. Really hanging out on that D flat. That was better than I anticipated. Like I figured I was gonna like it, but that was a lot better than anticipated. I really dug that track. This is a great example of dynamics. Why dynamics are important. Like a band like Slipknot. Slipknot is not overly complicated most times. Not overly complicated with their song structures or anything like that. Not even overly complicated with their instrumentation in a lot of ways, especially when compared to many other metal bands. But they know how to do dynamics super duper well. I mean, the first track most of us ever heard from, well, I don't know, Wait and Bleed is a little bit different, but the first track on the first album most of us ever heard, like that, just the build there, you have the same line being played by all of the instruments as you build into it, and then you have the variation for the verse. Is basically the same thing. You just have a couple of different accents. Similar effect with this Thy Art is Murder track. Like that is how you do dynamics. That's why dynamics are important. This was a fun track. I definitely dig it. I'm just gonna keep gushing if we don't end this soon. So thank you very much, nerds, for sticking around. That is how we do reactions here at Generally Nerdy. So stick around for more reaction videos. I've got at least one more in the bag, and we have the regular nerd news show, the pop culture things you can stay subscribed and such for. And I appreciate everything you do for the channel, even if it's just watching this video. Before we head out, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.